For the longest time, talking about UFOs was, a quick way to get labeled crazy. It was fringe stuff. But something's changed. The conversation has completely moved from the shadows right into the mainstream, and the people leading that charge, well, they are not who you'd expect at all. So let's get right into it.
Think about the people you're supposed to trust, right? We're talking about the people running our governments, our top scientists, the ones who have access to information the rest of us just don't.
What happens when those people start telling you something that sounds completely unbelievable? That's really the heart of the matter today. This isn't just about weird lights in the sky anymore. It's about the very credible, very powerful people who are now pointing up and saying, you need to pay attention to this.
Okay, first up, voices from the inside. Let's talk about the government and military whistleblowers. These are the people who have been on the inside, who've seen the classified files.
And we're starting with a big one, Reid. This isn't some backbencher looking for attention. This was the U.S. Senate Majority Leader. For a time, he was one of the most powerful people in the country, with access to pretty much every secret you can imagine.
So what did he do? He secretly pushed for funding for a Pentagon program called ATIP. That's the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, basically a UFO investigation office. And get this, he said it was one of the most important things he did in his entire career. Think about that. Out of everything he accomplished, this was a highlight. That tells you something.
And who was running that program? Well, that brings us to Elizondo. He's a former military intelligence officer, a real insider who says he was the one in charge of ATIP.
Now, Elizondo's claims are, well, they're bombshells. He's on record saying the U.S. government has exotic material, stuff not from this world. And he goes even further, claiming we've recovered non-human bodies from crash sites. Yeah, we're talking about physical proof, not just fuzzy photos.
And look, this isn't just happening in the U.S. Let's head up to Canada and talk about Paul Hellyer. He was their Minister of National Defense, so basically the equivalent of the American Secretary of Defense, a huge deal. After he left office, Hellyer's claims went into overdrive. He didn't just say, yeah, UFOs are real. He said that at least 4 different alien species have been visiting us for thousands of years, and that some of them are living on Venus, Mars, and one of Saturn's moons. Wow, this is coming from Canada's former top defense guy.
The list just keeps going. Next up is Haim Eshed. In Israel, he's known as the father of Israel's space program. This guy was in charge of their space security for 3 decades. We're talking spy satellites, national defense. He's a legend in that world.
And his claims are just as mind-blowing. Eshed says there's a galactic federation and that it's in contact with both the US and Israel. He even claims there's a secret underground base on Mars, a joint project between humans and aliens. Again, this isn't some random guy on the internet. This is the man who built Israel's space program. Okay, so we've heard from the government and military guys, but what about the scientists? Let's turn to the scientific front line. These are the academics and innovators, people who you'd think would be the most skeptical of all.
Let's talk about Jacques Vallée. This man's resume is just incredible. He's a venture capitalist, a computer scientist. He worked for NASA mapping Mars and even helped develop ARPANET, which was the precursor to the internet. And on top of all that, he's one of the world's most famous UFO researchers.
What's interesting about Vallée is that he doesn't just buy the simple aliens from another planet idea. He thinks the whole phenomenon is way more complicated, maybe even interdimensional. And here's a fun fact for you. Steven Spielberg actually based the French scientist character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind on him. How cool is that?
Then you have Loeb. Man, is he a fascinating case. On one hand, you have his credentials, which are just top tier. He was the chair of Harvard's astronomy department. But on the other hand, he's making these incredibly controversial claims. He's the one who famously suggested that the interstellar object Oumuamua was actually an alien spacecraft. As you can imagine, this has not gone over well with many of his colleagues. They've accused him of sensationalism and even of publishing his results before they've been properly peer-reviewed. He's a perfect example of this clash between credibility and controversial ideas.
So you've heard all these incredible claims from these very credible people, but that leads to a big problem, a crisis of credibility, really, which brings us to the pushback.
Because you have to ask, right? If these people are so high-level and trustworthy, why isn't this just a fact by now? Why isn't it an open and shut case? Well, because there's another side of this story.
Let's go back to Haim Eshed, the father of Israel's space program.
Well, the current chairman of the Israel Space Agency said Eshed went too far. And other investigators pointed out that his wild claims came out right around the time his book was being released, suggesting maybe it was just a publicity stunt.
And what about Luis Elizondo? His story gets murky too. The Pentagon itself has been all over the place about his role with a tip. One minute they seem to confirm it, the next they deny it. In fact, one former director flat out said Elizondo basically made up his role and had no job responsibilities with the program. So, who do you believe? And the scientific community's reaction to Avi Loeb? It's been pretty brutal. I mean, listen to this quote from another astrophysicist, Steve Deshesh. People are sick of hearing about Avi Loeb's wild claims. It's polluting good science. That's not just professional disagreement, that's genuine anger. They feel like he's damaging the reputation of their entire field.
So, where does this all leave us? It boils down to one very uncomfortable question. What does it all mean?
Okay, let's step back and look at the big picture. What do all these people have in common? They've all had these long, prestigious careers in government, the military, or science. They've had access to classified, high-level information. For most of them, there's no obvious reason to do this. They're not getting rich. In fact, they're taking a huge professional risk. They're putting their reputations on the line. And this list is even bigger than what we've talked about. It includes people like a veteran CIA pilot, a famous rock star from a band like Blink-182, and even European royalty. It's a strange and very accomplished group of people.
And that's really the core of the problem, isn't it? It's easy to dismiss one person as a crackpot. But what do you do when there are so many powerful, credible, and accomplished people, all saying the same unbelievable thing? What do you do with that?